Hi everyone, it's great to be here with you. Big thanks to Sam for inviting me into your community as a collaborator. I'm really looking forward to sharing some tips with you about that magical life sustaining activity that so many of us struggle with, good sleep. I know you've already spoken about sleep in this space, so I hope to be able to add some useful nuggets to what you've already learned. Before I dive into that though, let me introduce myself. My name is Brenda, and I'm a somatic coach based in Auckland, New Zealand. I'm originally South African, lived in the UK for 8 years in my 30s, and came to New Zealand for a 1-year adventure. That was 11 years ago, and we're still here and loving our Kiwi life a lot. My first career saw me in a variety of brand, communication, and marketing roles in the corporate world in a range of industries. After 20 years of that rat race, our move to New Zealand gave me an opportunity to design my second innings. A series of synchronicities saw me moving into the coaching space, and for the last 11 years, I've immersed myself in learning about all things somatic, nervous system, and attachment. Somatic means relating to the body, by the way, in case some of you aren't familiar with that term. My approach is informed by a number of different modalities that you can see here, which sometimes come together in delightfully surprising ways. I won't go into all the details now, but I thought it would be useful for you to understand the lens that I'll be using for this presentation. Much of my work today is with clients who struggle with anxiety, chronic pain, and other complex health conditions. I share with them a range of mind-body tools and practices that address challenges at a nervous and attachment system level. This means that I help clients explore why they respond the way they do, and how experiences and people from their past shape how they show up in the present. Then we look at how connecting with their bodies can deepen self-awareness and foster healing, recovery, and growth. Together, we practice new and different ways they can take good care of themselves. My intention with my clients is always to leave them feeling seen, heard, and cared for. There are two main parts to this presentation. For the first 10 minutes, I did a little bit of a theoretical dive into the link between nervous systems, our internal environment, and sleep. So I'll give you some of the theoretical underpinning for the presentation. And then in the last 15 minutes or so, I offer 3 different practices that you might want to try to improve your nervous system regulation and your sleep quality. So if you're not a theory person, jump straight ahead to it's about just over 10 minutes in, and you'll get some practical exercises to do. There are many different ways that we can use to improve our sleep. Many people focus initially on improving sleep by addressing sleep hygiene factors. Things like bedroom routines, timing your caffeine consumption, sleeping in a cool dark room, avoiding screens and devices that emit blue light. These tips and tactics can make a real difference to the quality of sleep for many people, so if they're working for you, please keep on doing them. Another popular approach seems to be to use medications, either pharmaceutical or natural, to address poor sleep quality. And although meds can often be useful to settle things at the beginning of a sleep journey or in times of crisis, I've met very few people who can or want to be on sleep meds for an extended period. So when the hygiene factors and the meds don't make a real sustained difference to sleep quality and quantity, what's the next step? Given that one of the key pillars in the Fresh Year of Freedom approach is environment, I've been exploring how our internal environment affects the quality of our sleep. I thought I'd use this opportunity to share some thoughts about how we can harness the power of our nervous systems to support good sleep. When we start looking at sleep from a nervous system perspective, one of the things that changes is an emphasis on internal rather than external factors. One of the resources that really helped educate me about the connection between nervous system and sleep is this awesome book by Charlie Morley, Wake Up to Sleep. I highly recommend it if you'd like to explore more about sleep from a nervous system perspective. There's so much good stuff in here that I couldn't cover in this presentation. One of the early metaphors Charlie used to explain his nervous system focused approach to sleep was to talk about how using medications and sleep hygiene tools to improve sleep is like changing the weather, but not addressing the underlying climate problem. He talks about needing to change the actual climate of sleep rather than just helping people weather the current storm. This made so much sense to me. So much effort is made in so many areas of life to address the symptoms of nervous system dysregulation, when addressing the real problem of the dysregulation itself would be a far more effective use of energy and resources. So I thought it might be useful to dive under the hood, as it were, and see how a little nervous system understanding might go a long way in improving sleep. For the benefit of those who don't speak nervous system, here's a quick overview. In humans, the autonomic nervous system is the part of our nervous system that controls all the body's involuntary functions, the things that happen without us making any conscious effort to have them happen. Things like breathing, our heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, how our blood circulates through our body, our immune system, hormones, digestion, reproduction, and elimination. If our autonomic nervous system is working well, we're working well. And if our autonomic nervous system is balanced, we won't need to try to sleep, as sleep will happen naturally. The autonomic nervous system has two main branches. The sympathetic nervous system is like the accelerator in a car. When it's activated, it makes our heart beat faster, our pulse rate goes up, we breathe faster, adrenaline gets pumped around our body, our muscles tense, and our system gets ready to take action. It's all systems go. The parasympathetic nervous system actually also has two branches, but we're just going to keep things simple for now. So the overall function of the parasympathetic is to be the brake pedal in the car. So when that's active, we're in a rest and digest state. Body and mind are calm, and this allows us to relax and revive. For good sleep to happen, the supporting pillars of the autonomic nervous system need to be balanced. Unfortunately, this is not often how things happen in the real world. Ideally, we'd like to see the stresses and strains of a day being balanced by calming influences. We humans are designed to have some ups, as long as they also come down. It'll come as no surprise that our autonomic nervous system is regularly pulled off kilter. Stress, inflammation, and trauma seem to be the main culprits responsible for our systems going wonky. What's more common than a pattern of even stresses and calm moments is that we all have many things that increase the level of activation in our systems. And unless we already have tools to regulate our nervous systems, it's likely that our sympathetic system will start to dominate. The patterns that show up and the time frames that it takes to do this will be different for all of us, depending on our own individual circumstances. But given that most of us experience at least a little stress most days, it's probably a safe assumption that many of us are living with overhyped nervous systems, and these are likely to be contributing to our poor quality sleep. If we're getting to the end of each day and our autonomic nervous system is out of balance, it makes sense that we're going to struggle to fall and stay asleep. There can be lots of reasons why our nervous systems become unstable. We'll each have our own contributing factors, and unfortunately, the instability grows and the impact on our sleep gets worse unless we take useful corrective action. The good news is that there are lots of ways we can learn to regulate our nervous systems. There are many simple practices that can have a surprising impact on our nervous system regulation and sleep quality. And once we find the tools that are right for us, significant change can happen. One of the first things I learned about good sleep at night is that we need to take good care of our nervous systems during the day. It makes sense to me now, having paid some attention to how I treat my nervous system during the day, but when I first heard that, I'll admit, I thought it was a load of rubbish. Many months down the line, I can report that there's more than a grain of truth to it. For me, it's still a constant work in progress, but the more I make space for my nervous system to settle, the more consistently I sleep well. So, what are these magic tricks, you ask? I'm not sure I can be promising magic tricks, but for today, I focused on 3 practices that I use all the time to settle my nervous system. I'll admit it was hard to choose, as there's so many things I do now to take care of my nervous system. One good thing about having choice is that there is choice. And one of the challenges about having choice is that there can be too much choice. I know you've also already been exposed to all sorts of amazing practices in this community, so feel free to add any of the tools you've been playing with so far to your sleep toolkit too. Anything that helps to settle things on the inside can be a useful addition, not just to your sleep improvement toolkit, but for your overall well-being. If there's interest in exploring more, I'm happy to put another video together that demonstrates other practices you can use to do the inside job. But for now, here are 3 ways you can start looking after your nervous system better during the day so that you can improve the quality of your sleep at night. I'll explain how I use each of these. My invitation is to try each one and see if it resonates with you. You might want to experiment for a couple of days, doing them at different times of the day and adapting them so they suit you and your lifestyle. I will say though, that nervous system regulation is like the lotto. You've got to be in it to win it. As with all change, it can sometimes take a while for the impact to be noticed. So don't give up on your first go, especially if you're the proud owner of a particularly frazzled nervous system. Nervous systems lack repetition and regular, consistent attention. Practice number 1 is something I do most often at my desk. Many of us spend so much of our day seated, punching away at keyboards, and we don't realize how much tension is creeping into our bodies. We sit in one position, get enthralled in what we're doing, and forget to move. By the time we realize how long we've been in one position, our bodies may be feeling creaky and tense. So the first step in this practice is to become aware that it's time for a break. Everything starts with awareness, right? In the beginning, you may want to use an alarm or a timer of some sorts to remind you to check in. Once you're onto yourself, take a moment to notice how you're sitting in your chair. On your next out breath, see if you can let your chair support you just a little bit more. That might mean letting more of your back make contact with the back of the chair. Or perhaps you let go of some of the tension in your legs. Maybe you let your shoulders drop and your neck rest against the chair if your chair is high enough to have a neck rest. For the next few breaths, see if you can release just a little more in each breath. The change may be subtle, perhaps even barely detectable when you first start doing it. But over time, I hope you'll notice more. Sometimes you may notice that a bigger breath rises spontaneously. I don't know if you saw that happening to me earlier. I'm also quite prone to do a little bit of movement in this chair. That's something that I really do find settling. So once you've settled a little, check in and see if there's any changes you can make to feel even more comfortable. I often feel like I'm sliding off my chair, so I reposition myself. Sometimes I notice I'm hot or cold, or I need to actually get up and move around. The trick is to listen to your body and respond to whatever it's asking of you. For bonus points, you can combine your moment of settling with a process I discovered in the somatic experiencing world, and that's to orient. So use your neck and eyes to slowly explore your environment. Add in a splash of curiosity and pretend it's the first time you've actually looked around your space. Take it nice and slow, gently moving the neck. And feel free to go as far to one side as you feel comfortable doing, noticing what you see. And then gently bring your neck and your eyes all the way around to the other side. Just taking in whatever's in your environment. Get curious about how you're moving. Are there places that you skip? Are there some things you don't like to see in your environment? Or is there something that catches your eye and sparks a little joy? You can repeat this as many times as you like. I'm just going to come back to the screen now. One of the things that can be useful to add on to that is to go joy hunting. So see if you can find something in your space that you really like to look at. If something jumps out at you, just let your attention settle there for a while. Take all the time you want to soak in that goodness. Drink it all in through your eyes. And notice what happens in your body. See the big breath? When you let your attention and your gaze settle on something that feels good. So I'm going to come back to the screen now, but you feel free to carry on joy hunting. You can take as long as you like to do this exercise. Treat yourself to an extended break if you're enjoying it. You can do it as often as you like, in any space. I find it especially useful when I'm in a new space and I'm feeling a little anxious or unsure of myself. Practice number 2 involves some gentle swaying from side to side. So for this practice, what you need to be doing is standing with your knees soft, kind of hip width apart, your ankles pointing out in front of you, and you're going to gently move from side to side. So as you're doing that, you'll be lifting one side of your foot, so you'll be on the inside of one foot and the outside of the other. Just gently swaying, moving from side to side at a pace that feels good for you. I like to slow things down. On most days it'll be a slow practice. Some days there might be a bit more speed. You want to be careful not to go too far over to the side that you hurt your ankles, that you push too far into your ankles, and just notice if that's something that you're doing. This is a really useful practice to just enjoy noticing your breath. You can even combine it with some orienting from the previous exercise. I'm lucky enough to have a big glass window out in front of me, so for me I also have the chance to connect with nature while I'm doing this, which is also very settling for my system. And you just want to keep swaying for as long as you have, or for as long as it feels good. I know when I teach this exercise to my clients, many of them find that it's something that they do in all sorts of other environments, so standing in a queue or working in the kitchen. Very versatile. You don't have to have such a big movement, you can just have gentle movement. That can also work for some people. The exercise itself comes from the introductory process for TRE, tension and trauma releasing exercises, but I've seen it used in many other somatic modalities as well, in different formats, different ways that you can do it. My invitation is to find the way that works for you, where you're getting some movement and you're starting to notice that there's some settling. You might find that your hands want to get involved too. Feel free to make it your own. It can also be quite fun to do this on an exercise ball. So you want to make sure that the ball you're using is the right size for you. You'll see I've got a nice big ball in the back. He can sometimes also be quite nice. Just want to make sure that your knees are comfortable. So I noticed this time that I went forwards first this time. That can also work. Ball's a bit noisy. I promise it's the ball making the noise. And you can also try doing the side to side and see how that feels. Some days side to side feels good. Today, forwards and backs, feeling pretty good. Again, this is one of those exercises you can do for a really quick break, or you can do it for a longer break depending on how much time you've got. Our final practice for today is all about slowing things down. Nervous systems really like it when we slow things down. This has probably been one of my biggest challenges. Until I started paying attention to myself, I had no idea how many things I did way faster than I needed to. Walking, talking, eating, reading, making tea, cooking food, filling in forms. My list was pretty extensive. I still struggle with many things on that list, to be honest, but I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of at least some of them, some of the time. One of the ways it always makes people laugh is to try to have a slow conversation. It's not going to work so well on this video, but try it sometime and see how it goes. You might even use it to slow down the conversations you have in your head with yourself. Or is that just me? One of the other things that's really useful to slow down is our breath. Before I jump into talking about breath, I'm going to include a quick disclaimer. For many people, especially those who struggle with anxiety, conscious adjustments to breath can be triggering, especially when you first start learning to work with your breath. If this is you, please know it's totally normal. There's nothing wrong with you. Breath can be a way more advanced tool than many give it credit for. If you notice some activation in your system just at the thought of paying attention to your breath, please listen to that and come back to this another day. It might also be something you want to take to your own coaching or therapy sessions if you're curious to explore further. In Charlie Morley's book, one of the tools he recommends for regulating the nervous system to improve sleep is something called coherent breathing. I found this to be really useful and convenient. You always have access to your breath, so if this works for you, it can be super useful. The premise behind coherent breathing is that breathing at around 5 breaths per minute leads to the best level of balance in the nervous system. You can read lots more about the science behind it in Wake Up to Sleep if you're interested. If you're over 6 feet tall, your ideal respiratory rate may be even slower. Given that most adults breathe at around 15 breaths per minute according to the research, reducing this to 5 breaths per minute can be somewhat challenging. If you're keen to try this, please don't push or force yourself. Rather take some time and reduce your breathing rate in comfortable increments. So to get started, let's get a measure of how many breaths you're currently taking per minute. I'll set a timer and tell you when to start. Your invitation is to breathe normally for 1 minute, counting the number of breath cycles in that minute. 1 breath cycle is an in-breath and an out-breath. So we want to establish how many breath cycles you have in a minute. Ready? Make sure you get comfortable, that you're sitting or standing comfortably before we start. Take a couple of normal breath cycles just to regulate, and let's go. Well done. How was that? It really doesn't matter what your number was. That was just an exercise in curiosity to see what your current breathing rate is. Now what we're going to do is try it again. I'm going to give you a timer for another minute and ask you to see how much you can slow it down. If you can get to 5 breath cycles in a minute, that's great. If that feels too taxing, then just carry on breathing normally. But I wanted to offer you an experience of trying to see what it's like to do some coherent breathing, which is that 5 breath cycles in a minute. To get yourselves ready for another round of breathing, make sure that you're comfortable, whether you're lying or sitting, whatever you're doing. Have your eyes open or closed, whatever feels comfortable. I'd invite you to breathe through your nose if that's at all possible. Don't put any pressure on anything. You want to try and make this a relaxing process. If you find that your mind is starting to drift off to other things, that's totally okay. That's what happens. Just bring your mind back to the breathing. And don't feel like you should be under any pressure to get to 5 breaths per minute straight away. That can take a bit of practice. So just use this as an opportunity to be curious about what might be possible if you can get closer to 5 breaths per minute, and get curious about what you notice in your system as a result of slowing down your breathing. The music and timer will be here to guide you again, so you're going to have another minute to practice breathing. Feel free to pause the video if you need more of a break before you do another round. Well done, folks. I hope you learned something interesting about breathing. Feel free to repeat the process as many times as you like in different settings, different times. Get curious about what you notice, about how your breathing patterns change, and also what kind of impact it has on your nervous system as a whole. If it ever feels too difficult or you're just not feeling it, stop, do something else. Breathing can be sometimes quite challenging, so please don't push too hard. So that brings us to the end of the session. Thanks so much for hanging with me. I hope you've learned something new and interesting, that you've got something to think about, that this nervous system approach to sleep is going to make some kind of difference in your world. And remember that a regulated nervous system doesn't just affect sleep, it affects well-being in so many ways. So these practices are worth putting into action for all-round overall well-being. Please get in touch if you have any questions or comments or thoughts you'd like to share. I look forward to hearing how this goes, and I hope that you all start sleeping like peaceful babies. Take care. Bye.